Folks, welcome back to the iHealth channel, iHealth Radio, the ABC network, with your host, Hurricane H. Today's guest is a powerhouse in health, longevity, and real life balance. Judy Gaman is the CEO of Executive Medicine of Texas, an award winning author of 7 books, a radio and podcast host, my favorite, and a mother of 10 with 6 grandchildren. God bless. She spent her career helping people live longer, healthier, and more energized lives, combining research, real world experience, and storytelling that actually sticks. From longevity secrets to practical health strategies, Judy brings insight you can apply immediately. Please welcome Judy Gammon. Judy, welcome to the show.
I'm so excited to be on with you, Hurricane. I love your energy. I love what you're all about.
Well, thank you so much. And first of all, as I am presenting this, it's God bless. That's a big family, and it's a lot of work. You talk about energy. You need a lot of energy to do that. And it's aligned with this topic of today because how many people get to have healthy um, lifestyles, with their grandkids. And so before we get into all that, let's talk about Judy, because again, you and I briefly discussed a little bit about your background, and for our audiences, you've been on radio for a long time. You've been on a podcast host, for a long time. Let's talk about that experience and your background in the healthcare and how you got into all this, because that's your journey.
Yeah, my journey's been exciting one. It's one of those things where you never know where life's going to lead you. There was a time when I was younger and I thought, oh, I want to be a pediatric trauma surgeon. I want to ride the helicopters. This is where I want to go, what I want to do. That wasn't exactly where life took me, but I'm very happy where I did land for sure. As the CEO of Executive Medicine of Texas, I get to make a difference every day in the lives of busy individuals who want to live longer, have more energy. We want to catch anything that could be going the wrong direction as soon as possible and get it corrected. Whether that's early cancer or just supplements because of the vitamin deficiencies that we've identified. It can be something small, it can be something big, but to everybody, whatever's going on in their life is big to them. And I think that is the important message in healthcare that's kind of missing a lot of the times in the usual state of healthcare today. But you mentioned that my journey into radio and podcasting, and it's kind of a funny one, Hurricane. There was a local radio station, and I didn't know that this one show that had been on for a long time. It was a Ken Cooper from the Cooper Clinic. He's since retired, but he had a long standing show, and we always thought, oh, we admired the work he was doing with that. And I just got this, I don't know, call it a premonition. I'm not sure what it was, where I told the founders, Dr. Gaman, Dr. Anderson, the founders of Executive Medicine, I think you need to go in for some media training. I think we're going to be doing a lot of media. And they really went kicking and screaming. And they're like, what? Why do we have to do this? I'm like, I'm sending you the Texas Actors Studio. And they're like, what? But you know what? It was a game changer because they learned how to talk in sound bites. They said that training, that 2 days, spent 2 days, long days, with a guy named Rich Perrin, and they spent some time with him, and it was a game changer for them, even with their patients, because they realized that sometimes you can't speak doctor speak. Sometimes you have to be able to break it down into very short and understandable sentences and kind of get to the meat as fast as you can to make the most impact. And what they've been able to do is not just do that for now a long time on the air and in whether that's TV or radio or podcasting, but they also been able to do that in the exam room. And so that's kind of been an interesting thing. So I had this premonition, we should do this. I'm thinking we're probably going to be doing a lot of television interviews and things coming up. And then I get this call, and it is the station that the other person's show had been on. And I pick up the phone, and they're like, "Oh, I'm so glad I got you on the line. This Ken Cooper's going to retire his radio show, And we were wondering if you guys would like to take the spot. And I said, oh, yeah, hang on just a second. Then I can talk to you more. I literally put them on hold. I did like this dance around the room. I'm like, how did this happen? Like, this is crazy. So I picked it up and I said, yes, I actually think we'd like to do that. And so I finished the conversation. I hang up and I call the doctors and I'm like, guess what? we now have a radio show. So that started as the Staying Young show, which turned into Stay Young America. And because as it grew and then it went national, and then it was, also on Sirius XM, the flagship station also moved and we went to KRLD, who was bought out by a major network. And so the times changed and they said, oh, this is a great time for rebranding. So that's why we changed the name. But so much came out of it. We have the Stay Young vitamin line. We've got the Stay Young 10 Proven Steps to Ultimate Health with the book. So it's kind of so interesting, Hurricane, to like how your life evolves, like how one thing, like just a thought or following that prompting to do something, and then the floodgates open. So that's kind of the podcast journey for us.
Well, thank you. It's amazing. I have a similar story to that because I've been in the insurance space for pretty much since '93, and so it's a long journey. And as the social media began, the hype, right, with all the stuff that's going on, I'm talking to my kids, and then they showing me all these YouTubers and stuff like that, and I'm like, well, why? So now
You're
I'm
like, I
leading
can do that.
operations. Well, no, that's actually not how it started. So I mean, I'm
Okay.
like, it sounded like it's not very difficult, and these people are doing all this stuff, they're getting all this information out there, and some of it is just fun and entertainment, right? And so I went to the company I worked at. I was leading sales and operations, and I'm like, guys, we should do just like it's very similar. Let's do something about this and have our own YouTube channel. So it wasn't the radio concept, but it was more like, let's do these things because I think we can reach more people and we can explain more and people and have a presence and be different from our competitors. It got shut down. It's not, we're not that kind of, okay, sure, no problem. And then at the same time, there was a radio show that was supposed to take place for us to do a presentation. And I did not, well, so they wanted me to present on the radio show, but I felt, my representatives were better qualified to do that, which I still believe that, your reps, they're the experts. I may run the division, I may have, understanding the whole picture, but when it comes to, talking to consumers, that's what they do. So I sent one of my best, and then I got criticized for that. Oh, because you couldn't do it. Oh, that's it. So between the two shutdowns, I'm like,
Famous
no,
last
that's
words, right?
that. Listen, they hit me hard. I'm like,
The
no, you know
fighting
what?
words.
I love a challenge. Boom. And the next day, literally, I started the online radio. I started building it and got the platform ready. Started, figuring out the concept. And at the same time, I thought about it, like, you and I said this. There's the weather channel. There's no health channel. There's no health radio. That is official health radio where people can actually go and get the source. There's a lot of stuff out there. There's talks. I mean, all along, but nothing dedicated just with where you can have 24/7 information that is from real experts around the world. And that's the thing, the expertise that we have in this current state of lives is amazing. And it's, I mean, I get, people guests from all over the planet, right? And they're not going to be on a regular TV, in general. I mean, you get some, maybe you get some experts every now and then on one of the main channels, right? Main media. But you're not going to get everyone out there that is doing something good. And so the idea was that, and it was a challenge. The rest is history. 7 years in now, of course, I can't challenge
Love
your time frame. You've done quite a bit, and you've gone internationally. You've done all that stuff, or national, right? In the states, and I'm sure some, when you're syndicated, the show sometimes are in directories all over the world, so people can actually listen. You never know who's listening somewhere. So yeah, well, I think this work is great, and your concept of staying young, staying healthy, longevity. That's a big deal. And I love what you said about your beginning, right? Everyone starts with a target in life because we've heard something. People, listen, everybody wants us to be doctors. They want
right.
us to be, our parents, at least in my generation, that's how it was. Doctors, lawyers, architect, something of that nature, something, in your face, big, that makes money and has positioning and stuff. And but sometimes that's not how it works. For the rest of the world, it's not everybody gets a chance to be that way. But we can make a difference every day. But health is everything. And
Oh,
you
yeah.
chose to be in that path, and your message, your work has been that all along. Now let's talk about this. So where's the passion itself for longevity and health really began for you?
Well, I think for me, my first job was in a nursing home, and I was 16, and my mom was a director of nurses. So I kind of grew up in that world because that was the world she lived in. She was the boss lady, and sometimes I'd get to go to work with her, and I'd kind of get to meet the people that lived in the nursing home and meet the other people that worked there. But I knew one thing, and that was that I didn't want to end up in a nursing home, even if it was one like my mom. My mom ran a tight ship. Boy, she did. But still, I just couldn't even imagine that. For me, it was almost like a certain level of Dante's Inferno. I'm like, this is not where I want to be. So I had a big interest in how do I stay young and healthy and not end up with some of these chronic conditions that deteriorate the body and the mind and put you in these positions. And some people in the nursing homes, believe it or not, were like in their 70s. And to me, that just seems so young. And so as time went on, I became very interested in longevity. When I was working on a book called Age to Perfection, How to Thrive to 100, Happy, Healthy, and Wise. I was working on that book for the practice with the founders. And it was a real eye opener because not only had I studied a lot of the blue zones on our own podcast, we had some of the experts from blue zones on, and we really had delved into what is it about longevity, and how can you have one patient in one exam room who's 70, and the next room someone who's 70, and the first room seems like they're 90, and the second room they seem more like they're 50. Like, what is that? I'd seen that so much in the practice, where even in 40-year-olds that feel like they're 60-year-olds. What is it about these people that stay vibrant through every decade of life? And just watching those habits and kind of watching how their own health stories, and even those that didn't stay vibrant, how those kind of played out. So I was super interested in that. And when I was working on that particular book, I got a writing assistant, and I said, her name was Emily, great, great girl. And I said, Emily, I feel like we're regurgitating other people's research a lot for this book. And I'd really like to just maybe talk to the people that have made it to 100. So why don't you find me people over 100? I'm going to give her what I thought was an impossible task. I'm like, I need a bunch of people over 100. I want to talk to them. And it was crazy to me that a week later she said, okay, I've lined them up. And I gave her criteria. They can't be drooling all over themselves. They have to be able to carry on a conversation. They have to have a good memory, like all these things. Because in my mind's eye, I think, was going back to that child in me that was in the nursing homes, that if they're 100, they must be really old, and they must, not have the capacities that you would maybe have at 70 or 80. And what I was happily surprised to find, is she had no problem finding people over 100 that were very vibrant and were just living life like to the fullest. They're either in their home or they were in independent living centers where they just, had an apartment, but they had a community, which, by the way, is super important, having a community around you. And during that time, I met a fabulous, fabulous woman named Lucille Fleming, who became my best friend. And you probably have seen this out there, that I have a memoir called Love, Life, and Lucille, Lessons Learned from a Centenarian. And I spent 4 years with Lucille. And she actually went out on book tour with me when the Age to Perfection book came out. We flew all over, did television interviews, and just had a ball. And she really taught me so much about life, so much about, my own life, being a third generation workaholic, and really having to figure out what is important in life. Like, what is it that I need to be able to do to live like her? I mean, she's in heels, heels and a dress, and flower on her lapel and a ribbon around her neck, and just on the residence council, playing duplicate bridge during our time. She threw out the first pitch of the Rangers game. So I really thought, this is kind of the North Star. This is where I want to be able to go. I want to be able to really know my family, generations of my family. So that was probably my greatest honor. Was she and I became best friends. She died just shy of her 104th birthday and had her mind about her the whole time.
Well, thank you, Judy. I mean, first of all, you taken us to a great time and story here because, well, first of all, I've worked in insurance space, but in the Medicare, so senior markets, right? So I have literally spent quite a bit of time at senior homes and senior centers and adult daycare, places because that's where the seniors are. That's where we're the insurer. So that's our audience, right? And to your point, it's very sometimes it does affect you when you see some of the conditions of how people are deteriorating or they're not taking care of themselves. In the contrast, I've seen also some real vibrant, younger feeling, looking, uh, literally just they're happy, they're socializing and things like that. So it kind of, the question is like, well, how is it, to your point? Some people are looking a certain, feeling, looking and acting a certain way, and the others are not. And you start thinking about like all the bad stuff that, the decisions we make in our lives and the impact of everything around us that gets us through that. So that is a big place, to start. And I love what you said. Do I want to be that way when I grew up? I mean, how far can I make it? And it's amazing because even my wife had the same experience because she was studying nursing, and she worked actually with some of these nursing homes. And and now she's more of a she actually stopped the whole thing because she couldn't handle the I guess the care and seeing people really like hurt and not doing well.
Oh, yeah,
And
it's mentally draining.
oh,
It's
it
super
is.
mentally draining.
Well, what she did, she chose, fitness. So she's been fitness for 15 years now.
Yeah.
Her message is like, I want to get them early and get them fit to stay fit so
Oh,
they can
yeah.
continue
Oh,
living.
yeah. She's keeping them out of there. I mean, that's the goal, right?
Well, it is, but it's amazing that some people may not even know what this is all about. Like, because especially when you're young, you don't even connect the dots. You don't even see that. I mean, we live on, people get senior, and that's about it. But the condition of living, and how well do you live, at that a certain point. And by the way, is that even a question? Is that even a condition? Is that even a need? Do we have to be that way? And to your point, I love what you said. Let's do this. Let's do this research and find out some of these people that have lived over 100. And by the way, that's a question most people like probably listening like, wow, people are over 100. Is that a common thing? You were surprised yourself. You got a lot more than you bargained for, in your study, right? And that's a big deal. Can we do that? So I love that. I mean, that's where your passion started. But now you mentioned something about work and so let's talk about that. Like, what drives people to really not make it to that, vibrant to a later age. What are some of the things in your expertise and your findings that contribute to us not really like being really at the point where we need help and in our ADLs and just basic stuff of life, right? As opposed to some of the folks that don't get any help and they just do what they want. They go to clubs, they go to stuff. I've seen seniors actually doing salsa, ballroom dancing. I mean, they're on cruise ships doing their thing. I mean, it's amazing, like the contrast. And some people out there, listen, I have a great friend, Madonna. She's actually an Olympic runner. I mean, she's well, she's not in the Olympics, but she runs like long distance and stuff, and she wins gold medals and stuff. I mean, it's pretty
That's great.
cool. It's
Yeah, that's
amazing
great.
when you hear those things. So what is your finding in this area? Humans that actually get to make it better and others that don't. What are some of the findings? And let's correlate that to work because I think we live in a stressful society. Unfortunately, you know, we are trained by default, from school, you get up, you go to school, you finish, you continue to go to college, you finish, you get to work, and boom, boom, boom. And you expect to retire at 65. And, true story, a friend of mine that I worked with, his father retired 65, died the next day. Didn't even enjoy life. It,
Oh,
it is,
that
it is,
one
it,
day
it,
of retirement.
it
Oh,
yeah,
that's
it was a shocker for me. As a matter of
yeah.
fact, he was one of the reasons that I've even myself changed some of the things I've done in my life because No, I need to live today. I need to enjoy my life. I need to be vibrant, do all stuff. People don't realize that. Oh, I'll get to retire and travel the world. I get to do this when I get a certain point. Are you going to have the energy? So let's
Right.
talk about that.
Yeah, I love that we're going to talk about this. There's a couple things that points that I think are important. One is every day we wake up and we have choices to make. And those choices that we make on an hourly basis turn into choices that we make on a daily basis and monthly and yearly. And then pretty soon we're, 5 years down the road and we're just an accumulation of our choices. So I think that's super important. When I was talking to the people that were over 100 and I was interviewing for the book, there were a few things that stood out. And I think this is really important that they all said you have to have friends. And this was interesting that they all knew this. You have to have friends. And then there was also a very strong, and this is interesting because they were not all of the same religion, not at all. And they all said, you know what, you have to have a higher power because if you carry the burdens and the weight of the world on your shoulders, it will crush you. And they all had kind of figured that out. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. Exercise and movement. I loved this one lady. I loved her. She was just so funny. She said, she had been a hard worker her whole life. And then by the time she had gotten older, they had invented gyms. Now think about that, right? Those words. They had invented gyms.
Wow.
Like you now go to a gym. So she says, so she got a membership. And so she would go to the gym and she would do the circuits, the different things. And then as she got older, obviously became harder. But she said at the time, she says, I think she was 101. She says, I'm 101 and I still go to the gym, but I don't put the weights on there, but I do all the movements. And she said, it's so important to keep your joints oiled. You keep your machine all oiled up and lubed up. And I thought, this is a great attitude. And there's so much to that because she's not, she's staying strong, she's staying flexible. So the fall risk and the injury from fall risk goes down dramatically. And we know that that is the demise of so many seniors. So I love that there was all of this kind of advice. Their top 10 list seemed to be really significant. Lucille's number one thing, which I tease throughout the book, but her number one thing was forgiveness. And I think, wow, we're all going to die young here lately because there doesn't seem to be any grace happening in the world. So it was really interesting to spend this time with them. But Hurricane, maybe the most interesting thing about this is right before we were going to put the book out, I said to Emily, my writing assistant, I said, I've got this crazy idea. I think I want to go in the classroom. I want to get a bunch of elementary students together and I want to ask them, what do you think it takes to live to be 100? I just want to know what they think. The irony of all ironies is they gave me almost verbatim the same list that the 100-year-olds gave me. So the takeaway from this is really that I think innately we know what it takes to live a long, happy, healthy life. We're born with those instincts. But somewhere along the way, the marketing that bombards us, all the messaging, all the choices, there's too many choices. I mean, it used to be you went to the grocery store and you went down the cereal aisle and it was like a quarter of the cereal aisle, right? And then you just looked for the most colorful box when you're a kid, who has the best prize inside. And, but now there's cereal on both sides of the aisle. It goes, and the aisles are way longer than they used to be. There's so many choices. We're bombarded with so many choices. So each day when we wake up and we make a choice, even though we may have made, say, a healthier choice, but is it the healthiest choice? Because the choices are so vast. So I think this is really an important message that we have to be able to turn off all of those messages coming from the outside. And social media has just made this 10 times worse because it used to be, you got so many commercials a day and it was how many commercial breaks were on your favorite show. That was what you got. But now, if you're watching TV, you get that. If you're on your social media, you're getting that. You're getting text to your phone. You're getting robocalls. I mean, it is not how our brains were meant to operate. So if your listeners, and I know I've been here, and Hurricane, you probably have too, find themselves in a position where they're like, I can't answer one more question. Don't talk to me. Like you get almost like zombied because I can't do it anymore. It's because our brains are like, think about your computer. If you just sat at your computer and you just open window after window after window after window after window, pretty soon your computer slows down. And after a while, you just have to completely reboot it, restart it, clean things out. Well, that's what's happening with our brains. We're just opening window after window after window after window. And pretty soon we can't make choices. We'll just take the easiest way out. We can't have long, deep conversations because we're tired. We end up with what I like to term as decision fatigue. I wrote an article about this, about
Love
how
it.
many decisions you make in the first hour. And believe it or not, there's thousands in the first hour that you wake up. Is it time to get up? Should I brush my teeth before I get in the shower? What outfit should I wear? Oh, if you check your phone in that first hour, you've just probably made 20 more decisions. Do I read this email or pass this email? Okay, now that I decide to read it, do I erase it? So this whole thing goes on and on and on, and it's taxing because we only have so much mental bandwidth, and so it's taxing on the brain. So to your question of what is it that people are doing maybe wrong if they want to live healthy and happy, there's a few things that I can say that will change your life dramatically, and they sound super simple, super simple. Um, do not get on your phone 2 hours before bed and the first hour that you wake up. Don't do it. Don't pick it up. Don't get on it. Your brain needs time to relax. Number two, journal. The brain needs somewhere to dump the information. So whether that's a prayer journal, or it's just a diary, or it's just hey, I want to write things down, I want to remember tomorrow. Because if you don't journal, what happens when you go to sleep? You lay there and you go, oh, I got to remember to do this, got to remember to do that, and you're replaying the day, and you're also deciding what you want to do tomorrow. A good thing on the journaling is to kind of look at, what did I learn today? So this forces your brain to go back through the day and say, okay, who impacted me most today? Ask yourself these kind of deep questions. So this actually resets your brain so that when you go to sleep, you can fall into a deep sleep. And when you wake up, you're good. You can start, as long as you don't go pick up your phone right away. You're good. So there's these simple things. And then when you're at the grocery store, shop the perimeter of the store. Nothing healthy lives in the middle of the store. That's where all the barcodes are. This is where things have 20 ingredients. Shop the fruits, the vegetables, the meats, the dairies, the eggs, all of that, but stay away from the barcoded things. And then if you want to have a snack, have the 5 ingredient rule. If you pick up something and there's more than 5 ingredients, or there's an ingredient that you cannot pronounce, do not put it in your mouth. These are very simple tips, but they will be life changing if you can just have the discipline. And it also cuts down on your decisions, because you're not, do I want this or that or this or that? You already know my decision is based on this rule. So you are going to save yourself so much mental bandwidth just with these simple things.
Well, thank you, G. I'm listening to you, and it's like in my mind's like firing up a lot of synapses right now with what different areas I want to go. But here's the thing, it's amazing because a lot of the stuff you said really refers to mental, you know, conditioning of who we are. There's also the movement, which is, the body and functions, and certainly the nutrition part. I mean, these are like, and I think also you inferred in a way or the other to sleep, because this way we don't get all, hyped up, before we go to bed thinking about tomorrow, and journaling will help in relaxation and definitely get into the sleep mode. So these are like some elements that are really basic for life, right? We need to eat right, we need to sleep correctly, we need to have a social surrounding, and by the way, you mentioned that something that you discovered as a common, rule. And by the way, we are social creatures by default. By nature, we're supposed to do that. But I think this is you mentioned something about social media, and without bashing social media, because there is a great part to it. We are on social media, but the idea is that some of it is driving people away, you know, and really disassociating from the actual social, real social, presence. I mean, they're social on a platform, on an actual device, but they're not social in their surroundings. So it takes away that stuff. You know, I think when you did your work and reviewed these folks that have lived 100 years plus, these folks, they lived in the era, as you said. The gym was not even started. They lived in nature. They had different things. The food was natural. To your point, there was not a lot of choice of bad, manufactured stuff. It was just the basic elements. I mean, even you see some videos now on reels and stuff, they show you like before and now in terms of some of the old supermarkets. You can see a huge difference in
Oh, yeah.
it's like, to your point. I mean, we had a couple of, like everybody knew what products you're gonna get, for breakfast and stuff. Now it's like there's so many of them. Talking about ingredients, we can't even read half of the stuff on these things. The labels are just amazing. And by the way, in the US, it's worse. I mean, unfortunately, compared to some parts of the world, like some elements that we can read in these boxes are not even found in Europe, for example, because they're
Right.
banned, right? So it's a full operation. This is not a one thing. It's you got to almost like be aware. First, I think that's the thing, right? We have to be aware. And it's funny that you mentioned the kids themselves not living yet, through that process, and they already understand that this is what I need to do, and these responses based on what you found is very similar to what actually you had with the elderly, right? So it's amazing how it all does that. But the problem is, there's to your point, there's marketing, there's bombardment, there's where we have a lot of input that's coming to us to teach us how to live, and it's not how to live healthy. I mean, we've been told how to eat breakfast and what breakfast, of the champs look like. We've been told how to dress and how the best dress code would be. We've been told what to do and not to do, right? And so a lot of us, we don't do our own research, and therefore we wind up, just following the crowd, and we actually fall in the trap. So you and I are in the healthcare, and we know that eventually a lot of this stuff winds up in healthcare, and
Right.
and there is a reason behind that. I mean, maybe there's some profits to be made with that, right? Without getting into political stuff, we know that that's real stuff. People get not so healthy, they wind up in the healthcare system. There's insurance, there's pharma, there's all kind of stuff that's going on. But the industry is profit. I mean, that's okay. By the way, I'm not against profit or capitalism. Let's make as much money as we can. That's great. But it's up to the people to make the choices of the stuff. But when the question begins about longevity, what are we doing? What is our role? Are we doing the stuff? And to your point, these steps they're not special in a way. They're really normal stuff that we're supposed to be all doing.
No,
And
we
it's not something
forgot.
yeah, it's like what the hell happened to it? I mean, like it's like hypnosis. You're gone. You don't even know about these things. And you're right, by the way. It's funny because you're talking about the phone 2 hours before. I think most of us, including myself, sometimes I actually fall into that trap and wake up and I find myself holding the phone. I remember days when I left work at 5 p.m. and I didn't see anything or email or anything until the next morning at 9
Right.
a.m. And
Right.
we
Yeah,
can't do that
we
now.
unplugged. We unplugged. If you got a family, no phones at the dining room table ever. Family meals need to be eaten together. The Even when you go to bed, your phone should never be on your bedside table. It needs to be in the bathroom. It needs to be where if you need your phone, you get up and you walk to it because that should be in the morning. Even if you say, "Well, I use it for my alarm," that's fine. You'll hear it. Turn the ringer up, put it in the bathroom, but don't put it on your bedside table. There's a million reasons not to put it on your bedside table, but we'll just go with the one that's, you don't want to be tempted to pick it up and say, oh, let me check the news, or, oh, what's the weather going to be tomorrow? Or, oh, I heard a ding. We're like Pavlov's dogs, right? The phone dings and we start salivating and I'm like, I gotta get to my phone. And I don't know if you've ever like left the house or left work and you realize, oh my gosh, my phone's on my desk or it's in, on the kitchen counter. Panic.
Like,
I mean, panic. It's like, hi, I don't have my phone. I love this. I love this. But you hear people say, I have to go back. I have to get my phone. Why? Well, in case I have a car accident. Well, believe it or not, people had car accidents
while they're
before
on the phone.
the cell phones were here. We figured it out. I locked myself. I was up at the office last week And I was so dumb. I had walked out into the hall, the door shut behind me. My pass card, my phone, my purse, everything was inside the office. It was this big old Texas storm coming. And I was like, huh, I guess I'll go next door and go ask the lady at the Elmer. There's a real nice hotel next to us, if I can use the phone. And the funny thing was when I got there, I was like, okay, whose number do I have memorized? Because now they're all in our phones. So, but just the idea of, I didn't panic, but I know there could have been a moment of panic about what am I going to do? What am I going to do? Because we don't think, oh, just walk somewhere and get a real phone, like the kind that's corded to the wall, and call somebody. At least memorize, 5 people's phone numbers, because some point in time, this I guarantee is going to happen to somebody, and you got to have these phone numbers memorized. At least, someone who has all the other phone numbers that you need, so that you can call one person and they can give you the other numbers. It's funny that when Lucille was alive, we would go to like the grocery store, we'd be somewhere, and she'd say, okay, go, and I would give her a name and she'd tell me their phone number, and I'd give her another name and she'd tell me their phone number. She wanted to do this every day, and she said, I think this is a good brain exercise. And she goes, I can always just check, how's my brain doing. um, but she had all these phone numbers memorized, and it was fascinating. She had the time, I'm thinking this one particular day, I mean, we must have done 20 phone numbers, and she was 102. And she just wanted to make sure she never forgot. She goes, I mean, I don't know. I could be taken to the hospital and they'll say, what's your son's phone number? I better know it, you know? So I love just those little bits of wisdom that came from her. And I think everybody needs a Lucille in their life, which is, why I wrote the book Love, Life, and Lucille, because that kind of wisdom, I think, has been buried, because so many people that had that kind of wisdom, they've passed away. And somebody's got to be keeping account on these things. She came to the United States from Prince Edward Island with a suitcase in her hand and a locket around her neck in the middle of the Depression. And new country, middle of the Depression, nothing, and she made something out of herself. She put herself through college. She put herself, which was nursing school. She got a job. She supported herself. She married well, had terrific children, and it was such an inspiration. But just that grit that I think is being lost, that we've got to get back to.
Well, Judy, thank you. And I think that one of the problems we have now more than ever is I think where everything is so simple, so easy, and we get lazy and we got comfortable. And to your point, I mean, as simple as memorizing a phone and number. Back in days, you had to have the number. You gotta, you have to go down somebody. You have to either have your little booklet, that you carried with you, or
Right.
you have, or you had to actually really just have a memory, of a few numbers that you can connect with. We don't have to do that. Most people are like, okay, I'm just gonna, Siri, dial, John, dial
Right.
Judy, and so
Yeah.
it's a lot easier. But again, we're getting so lazy that we're not even operating our brain to a capacity where we can get it, like, and as we get older, you know we're not the same. Our cells are different. Stuff depends on the nutrition, depends on the
Right.
air we breathe. I love what you said. You just referred to the idea of, you know, the damage of picking up a phone before you sleep and stuff. But there's other damage, EMFs and so on and so forth.
Right. Oh
You know,
yeah.
all these things that we don't even pay attention to are real. And, again, you're watching TV, we're in screen time all the time.
Oh
All
yeah.
the stuff is really getting to
The
you.
blue light, it totally messes up your circadian rhythm, which means you're not going to get the REM sleep. We now know, because we have functional MRI, if you don't get into deep REM sleep and get in at least 7 hours of that deep REM sleep, because the REM expands with every hour of your sleep, your brain can't wash itself like a washing machine and clear out the plaques. We know all of this stuff now. But if you look back, right, people just intuitively knew this. Oh, you got to go to bed when the sun goes down and get up when the sun comes up and work hard. And I mean, these were things that we just knew as human beings. And I think the more dehumanized we get, the harder it's going to be to be healthy and to have our right minds about us, because these instincts they're real and they're put into our system for a reason. The operating manual is imprinted on us as long as we don't let somebody else, you know, exit out, white it out, take it out. We know what it takes for survival. We just instinctually know some things, but we have to be able to be aware and be paying attention to those things.
I know you said something, Judy, that we kind of lost it over time, but especially with people that are they lived long enough, but they're no longer with us. But the good news, we have these books, we have these shows, we have some of the stuff that's being, now at least being given to these audiences around the world. Hopefully they can listen and we can spark something with someone that can make a difference in their life. And I know we do that because these things are not, going in deaf ears. They really have impact. But those that receive this message, right, for example, will actually get something. Listen, I get challenged, with my kids all the time. By the way, you have a huge family, so you've
I'm
been there
laughing.
with
You said I get challenged by my kids. I'm like, oh yeah, I know that story.
yeah. No, especially when you tell them like, listen, you want to live. Like sometimes they say something about me. I'm like, well, you haven't made it to where I am today. You at least you got to do some of the things. Like, oh, you too much. I'm trying to do better. I don't want to be, learn limited, in the next few years. I mean, as you hit every decade you take, it's a decade, that is gonna get more difficult. It's just
Yeah,
normal unless you maintain. And maintain means you got to work out, you got to eat healthy, you got to be careful, you got to sleep. And that's the thing. Like I challenge my kid and I, for example, sometimes we have arguments. Like he's not sleeping. He's like screaming, playing games. I'm like, dude, I need to give him my rest. So stuff like that. It's real,
it
and
is.
we don't get it. Naturally, to your point, we're supposed to actually. It's sunset, you go to sleep, it's dark, and that's it. In the morning, you get up, the sun's up, you get some red light beams
Yep,
on you from that early sun.
that's right.
Feel the nature, get fresh breath of the air. None of that stuff is happening now. It's amazing, and it's so sad because we thought that we are getting better, and I'm gonna now deep dive into the medicine stuff, and we thought that people were getting better and healthier, but we're not. Actually, I think there are studies now that we're on a decline. We thought we have a better life cycle now compared to maybe our ancestors because of disease and stuff. Yeah, we had discovered all the good stuff, and then maybe the fountain of youth here is really what you're talking about today is like what we need to do to just maintain and not lose and kind of regress in terms of vitality, right? And that's
Right.
that's really a big deal. So let's talk about the clinic, right?
Sure.
How what services do you have? What how that do people actually benefit, and what are programs that they can get in so they can get into a better mode of vitality? And for example, one thing is I know you mentioned something about scans and things. What are some of the tests that are needed to determine where we are physically, maybe mentally, or even just from a health perspective?
Yeah, I think there's some problems that we solve for people, the people that come to us from all over the globe. We have an international following. They fly into DFW, the Dallas airport, and they'll spend some time with us. And the whole idea is that we understand that people are overtaxed. They're tired. They're gaining weight. They don't know what's wrong. Maybe they're told, "Well, I ran your labs. They're normal." In the normal healthcare setting, in the standardized healthcare setting, but normal isn't optimized, and they can only tell you results on what they actually ordered, which usually is just a blood count and a chemistry panel. When we see people, we're ordering about 150 different lab values. We're looking at hormones, we're looking at inflammatory markers, we're looking at all kinds of things. Of course, we're looking at blood count, we're looking at chemistry panel, but we're going far beyond that because that's where the story is, the true story. If we want to look at each person as an individual, we really need to do some deep dive. And then, depending on what else they have going on, we might want to do micronutrient testing and check their micronutrients within their cell to see, okay, are you actually getting the nutrients that your body needs? And are they functioning properly within your body? Some people need more of particular things. Other people, maybe they're taking a supplement and it's too much. So they're actually getting an overload of particular um, nutrient, vitamin, mineral. And then, we can do brain mapping and neurofeedback and things like that. But our whole goal is when people come to see us at Executive Medicine is they're first of all going to get a really true understanding of their health status. So we start with the lab values, but we may put them on the treadmill, do a cardiac stress test with the Bruce protocol, or maybe we're going to also add a VO2 max because we want to check the gas exchange between the heart and the lungs, and also gives us their basal metabolic rate. How many calories do you need to eat to maintain your weight, to gain, to lose, that kind of thing. We're really looking at their mind and their body, and then also their mental health. How are you doing mentally? We'll do some functional tests on their brain, some cognitive testing, and it's really fascinating to see people hold you give them a leather binder at their 2-week appointment when they either come back, or if they've flown in from somewhere else, we'll send them the binder and do a virtual follow-up. But when they're holding their story in their hand and they're like, oh my gosh, this is me. And they open that leather binder, and the first section is an executive summary. It could be 5 to 13 pages with what we're going to do about it. And behind that are all the graphs and the charts and the results, and it's all specific to them. What's going on with their body, because in standard healthcare, it is a pigeonhole. Okay, everybody gets the same thing. Well, everybody's very different. And they have different genetics, they have different environmental factors, they have different health histories. Before they even come to us, we've done a 30-page questionnaire because we want to know before they come, what's our game plan with this person. So it's really a fascinating place to come to, where we have multitude of physicians. We have a chiropractor as well. We've got a neuromuscular massage therapist. We have a whole nursing staff, and on site we have CT, and we have X-ray and DEXA and red light therapy and brain mapping, and all kinds of modalities that we can use to get to the bottom of what's going on and then get them a plan moving forward. We just hired an orthopedic surgeon to run our performance medicine department, because we see a lot of athletes from around the globe that come in and they want to be at peak performance. And we want to be able to say, okay, how can we find ways to, whether that's PRP or stem cell injections, or, maybe it's stem wave because they've got an injury, but they don't want to have surgery. And there's other ways we could work around that because they don't want to be out of the game. So it's really a great place for people to come, whether they are a professional athlete or whether they're 60 something years old or 70 something years old, and they're just like, you know what, I don't want to be in a nursing home, I want to live the best life I can. Or maybe they have a health concern. We find very fascinating things on the full body CT scans, and if we do like a virtual colonography, on a virtual colonography, we've actually found tailbone cancer because it's done on a CT machine. So we get an image of the pelvis and of the abdomen. So we're looking at more than just inside the colon. We're looking at the inside and the outside of the colon. I love what we do because we can, we can take someone who is in really bad shape and turn them around. And we could take someone who's in good shape that wants to be in great shape. We can take someone who's in great shape that wants to be at their best ever. And we have the modalities to do that. Whether we're doing that with hormones or peptides or, whatever the right thing is for them. And it's not pigeonholed. It literally, what's right for someone is not necessarily right for the next person. And I just love it. It's a calling, I think, for every one of our physicians. It's certainly a calling for me and the leadership. We come to work. We love what we do. We just do.
I have to say, Judy, what's not to love? I mean, what you're doing is really changing lives. I mean, I joked about the fountain of youth. I mean, you are. I mean, that's a mythical thing, but the real thing is really this is it. You got to figure out what's going on and help people become better or get to the most level or the best level they can ever be and optimize themselves. And I love like the variety of things that you have and even the depth that you go through because to your point, I mean, everybody does a physical once a year, if they even do that, because some of us skip those
A
things, you
physical with
know.
air quotes, right?
Physical, that's right. I mean, it's a wellness visit, right? We have those that are covered by insurance companies. And by the way, we could talk a little bit about that part, because that, I think, there's an inhibitor there where people may not be able to access better care because they lack of insurance, and their insured levels, right? And so it becomes a problem. But really, the ability to find more, and I love what you said about not everybody's the same. It's not the same canvas. We're just going to run the same brush
Right.
across. This is, you and I are different. There's different, to your point, genetics, metabolism is different, all kind of stuff. I mean, and by the way, this repeats itself in discussions. Whenever we talk about health and longevity, there is no one person template to the world. Everybody's unique. Everybody's got their own angle. And between the type of food we eat, the environment we live in, and so on and so forth, can make a big difference. And the genetics are that's one of the biggest things. I love what you said. 30 pages of a questionnaire. That's probably one of the hardest and longest surveys I've ever heard about. But I'm sure it just basically gives you a quick and nice little picture of everybody's being status, and therefore you can actually map up more and guide them towards what would work the best. It's the standard operation, right? You assess. It's like coming in as a consultant. I go to a company, I got to do an assessment of everything and then give them
Right.
stuff. So there's a lot of questions. I remember in some of the assignments back in the days, we would spend almost a month or so interviewing people in different departments, different levels, just so we can understand what's going on in the corporation. And then, spend about a month again to figure out, all the stuff that needs to
Right.
be done to make it work. And you're doing this for people's health, and it makes a difference. And the thing is, people don't even know, that they can do these things. I think that problem is that people, they know what's standard, and standard is,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna go check, get my basic, lab work, whenever I get that, and whatever is covered. And then that's the end of it. Doctor says, okay, you need this, or now we discovered that you have an illness. Here's some pills. We're going to mask, the pain and the problem, and that's about it. I think what you're doing is way deeper than that. You determine stuff. And that's a question to you, Judy. Now, let's say you've discovered there's a problem, right? You do have the solutions to improve, and I'm sure you've done that. You've actually turned things around, because I think if we do it right, our bodies are supposed to heal. They're supposed to actually recover, if given the right environment. Anything that you could share about that part?
Yeah, I really believe that there's a lot of things that when people see things in black and white or color, and they suddenly realize, oh, this is where I am and this is where I want to be, the next question is, how do I get there? So when we think about how do we get there, it's totally different for everybody. I think about like the VO2 max testing, right? When we do this, we also can look at METs. So this tells us at what level of exercise is effective exercise for somebody. So the mirror doesn't tell the whole story. Some people, if effective exercise for them is running a marathon or rock climbing, where somebody else, all they have to do is go for a brisk walk. So really, there's a lot of things that we can do to improve our health. We just have to know what are the right things for each of us. Like you would never tell somebody with bad knees, okay, we need you to start jogging. So what is it that is going to work? Or someone with a bad shoulder, we would never say, we want you to do 10 planks a day, because that doesn't work for them. But there are things that I think are really important that people need to know what their limitations are. But movement is crazy. We've gotten way too sedentary. They say sitting's the new smoking. And whether we're in front of our computer, or the worst, we're doing this, we're looking down at our phone, and your head just became a 60-pound bowling ball, supported and strained by the muscles in your back, and you wonder why you have back problems. Or you get the hump. The hump is real. And there's ways to get rid of that, but it's really about understanding what each individual needs. But for the individual, it's about listening to your body. The old doctor, back in the day, the joke was the patient would come in and say, doc, when I do this, it hurts. And the doc's like, well, don't do this. So figure out where are your limitations? I'm not saying don't stretch those limitations, because if you say, well, I get out of breath when I walk, yeah, well, you need to first of all get checked out, make sure there's not a reason that you're out of breath when you walk. But if it's deconditioning, take those first steps. It's amazing how quickly we can get back into a conditioned state. We just have to add upon it. Maybe it's you walk to the end of the street and back today. Tomorrow you walk to the end of the street and back twice. And then you just kind of increases. Before you know it, you're going to be able to walk a mile. And once you can walk a mile, you're going to be able to walk 2 miles. And then you can get up to 10,000 steps a day, which is really our goal, that we want everybody at least 10,000, 12's better, but 10,000 steps a day. Use the technology. Just get a little Fitbit or something. Track your steps. You don't need the whole, which is great. Apple Watches and smart things are great, but just simple things work too. We can't forget that simple things work. So somebody says, "Oh, I'd love to get 10,000 steps, but I can't afford an Apple Watch." Well, you can get an $8 pedometer off of Amazon, and even if you aren't tracking your steps, you could just walk anyways. I always love it when, and I'm guilty because I used to try to get 10,000 steps before 10 a.m. I would head off to the gym and I'd leave my Fitbit. I'm like, oh, it's a wasted day. I'm like, no, it's not. It's not a wasted day. I know how many times I got to do that track to get my 10,000 steps in. But I think we become almost so dependent on technology that we feel that it plays a much more vital role than it really, really does play in our lives.
Thank you so much. You I see that you got frozen for a second there. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So it's amazing because it's walking is not very difficult, right? We can do it. And you don't need to actually count. If you walk for half an hour, you walked half hour. That's a lot of steps. I mean,
Yeah, that's right.
it's as simple as that. It's not even like you have to figure out how many exact steps that you've done. You increase that and you can do it. I mean, you go
Yeah,
shopping, just go to the mall. I mean, we have mall walkers, right? People
right.
just walk around the mall. I mean, some of these malls are huge, and by the time
Oh,
you
they are.
finish, all the floors, I mean, you've done actually an hour and a half walking around. That's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
and you're
You know,
distracted. So it doesn't feel like, you maybe walked a couple miles, but you did. So I love the idea of going somewhere and walking. Or if there's a store you normally drive to, but it's walkable, walk to the store, carry your groceries back. That's your workout for the day.
you know,
These are simple things that we used to always do.
I still do. It's funny that you said that. Like this, one of my favorite stores, and people can criticize me any way they want, is Walmart. I love Walmart, and I would spend maybe an hour in Walmart just walking around and just aisle to aisle. I love outdoor stuff, so I'll be checking things, and it's not a lot, but you can do something like that. There's a lot of stores, and again, malls are the best. But you're not even if you by the water, right? You can go on a
Oh,
boardwalk,
yeah.
and that's a perfect place to be. Uh, we're at least in the states, I know for a fact we have a lot of parks everywhere. You can actually
Right.
get into a park and just get a trail and just walk around. And then I'm not talking about hiking trails. This is just a regular walk,
Yeah. Just a paved
nice.
trail,
Yeah, it's a nice little stuff with lights and everything.
some
Obviously,
fresh air.
yeah, there's things that we can do. It just that I think you said it. We're lazy. We just love to sit and it's easier and we're distracted. I mean, who the hell wants to leave their scrolling and start walking in nature with nothing? Here's the thing. I've seen people walking with their phones on.
Oh, I know.
So there's no excuse.
They're
Even if
keeping the orthopedic surgeons in business, because you know how many people have
they trip,
accidents looking at their phone and then they trip
boom.
or they fall. Yeah, it happens all the time. All the time.
Listen, I see them. I do have this new thing with humans that are like zombies, like one hand zombies, because really that's what they are.
Hmm.
They put their head down. They would walk right into a car, across a car. They don't even look. I swear to God, they
Yeah,
expect you to stop. But if I'm distracted, it's over.
right.
And we've heard of stories of people who got literally hurt, or even died because
Or
of
died.
yeah,
They
they're looking at their
walked
phone
right
and
out in front of a car.
that's it. I mean, it's amazing. Like why or trip like fall. I've seen them in manholes. They trip, and they fall into a manhole because they didn't see it. They were on the phone. Boom. There's
Yeah.
there's do not stop. And boom, they're just in. It's crazy where we are today. And simple things work. And by the way, I do want to say this, because listening to you, you're the CEO of executive medicine, right? But your passion, I have to say this because I can see if all the CEOs out there have your energy and you're passionate about what you do, things will be very different in most of these corporations. I think that's something you believe in the mission, you believe in what you do, and you're changing lives day in day out, and you're so immersed into it that you know every aspect of it. You talk about like someone who knows every single thing about the operation, as a leader should. And that's actually something I just wanted to commend, because it's literally a big deal, because and we do leadership talks, and I mean we can definitely do a whole session just about running a healthcare setting, right? It's a big operation, and so it's a big deal. But I love that, because even for your clients, your patients, knowing that someone at your level is really out there thinking about them physically, mentally, and really, almost like you're really dedicated to them, right? You're running the show, right? But you want everybody to do stuff. Yes, there's profitability, and that's nothing. There's a business, right? But you're in the business of making people healthier, better, vitally, inclined, right? It's a big deal, and it's also rewarding, not only financially, but I guess how many people you've changed, right? That's a great thing. So I know we're about the hour here, but here's a question. People, obviously, you said they travel to you from anywhere. Now the insurance part is a big deal, because sometimes people may not have coverage. Some of these things may not be covered. Um, can people self pay? How does that work for folks? If they really want, and obviously, do you have multiple clinics, or this is the only spot that you
Yeah,
have?
we have the one clinic, in a large clinic here in Texas, South Lake, Texas, which is real close to the Dallas Fort Worth airport. And if they fly private jets, they can come into that. There's a private airport close by as well. So the thing with insurance is we do not take insurance. Insurance doesn't cover a lot of what we do anyways. It's really, people say, well, can I get a receipt and I can file? If you're not Medicare, the answer is yes. If you're not Medicare or Medicare Advantage, but we always say, if you get anything back from your insurance company, because we are at a network, and a lot of this they won't cover, because what they want, and with the way the system, and you're in healthcare, you understand this, the way the system is designed is by codes. So they want a diagnosis code. We're only going to order the test if we can already prove you're sick and you need it. We have a completely different mindset. We're going to order the test, first of all, to make sure you're not sick, but also to keep you from getting sick. So it's a completely different mindset. So if someone were to get a receipt and then to submit it, I always say, just it's a Christmas bonus. Just see it that way. Yeah, great, you got something back. But it truly is an investment, in their health. And our people that come to see us, a lot of people like, oh, you just see the rich and the famous. That is so not true. We obviously see some of the top earners in the country, and we see professional athletes, but we also see people that say, you know what, my dad died of heart attack, and I've saved my money because I really want to know what I can do to not die of a heart attack. And they forego the lattes and all the other things that we tend to spend our money on, and they save for it, and they come, and it's a big decision for them, and we don't take that lightly. I think one of our nurses, his name's a Bear. He's a military guy, fabulous, fabulous nurse that works for us. And he said it best. He said to the staff in one of our all staff meetings, every day is the Super Bowl for our patient. Every day. So they are investing in their health, but they also are trusting us to be their people, their healthcare team. And every day somebody walks through this door, we have to be like it's the Super Bowl, because they deserve it. They deserve it, and that's why they came to us. So it's that mentality that is really what takes the experience. Of course, getting the results are important. Of course, all of these things are important, but it also is, you come somewhere where you're embraced. I love, I don't know if you have a minute, Hurricane, but I got to tell you the story. It's kind of a
Oh,
funny
I have
story.
plenty. I'm all
Okay,
yours.
this is a funny story. So this couple came to us, and I think they were just shopping us. I don't. It was a kind of an odd thing. They came in and they wanted to tour and they wanted to talk to me, and they were from somewhere in the Northeast, and they were very. like everyone in all of our patients, everyone is just so friendly, but they were very kind of standoffish, and they were asking questions and sitting up straight, and it was, I feel like I was in the principal's office, but it was all going great, you know. And in walks one of our patients. We have a lounge, so we have a regular reception area, but then we also have a lounge called the Stay Young Lounge, and our patients, you know, they'll have their lunch in there because they come fasting, and it's a beautiful place to be. So we're in the lounge, but on a sofa and chairs. And then in walks this particular patient of ours, long hair, male, long hair, scraggly hair. He's got on like a baggy jacket, and you'll understand why I'm telling you this in a minute. And he goes over and he raids the snack. Like, we've got this, it's a nice bar, but it's got, like, you know, some snacks, and that's got a, you know, a Keurig and all the things, so some fresh fruit and all that. He raises it, he's stuffing it in his pockets, and he opens up the underneath cabinet, you know, where the overflow is, and starts digging through there. He sticks a couple in, and I'm thinking, oh, this is pretty crazy timing, right? So he comes over, and he's got like a granola bar unwrapped, and he starts eating it, and he just starts standing there like behind me, and then people are on the couch in front of me. Then he's like, "Yeah, you thinking about coming here?" And they're like, "Well, we're considering it." You know, they're like, "We're considering it." And he's like, "The snacks, man." He takes his jacket like some New York guy selling watches. He opens up his jacket and goes, "The snacks, man. You got to come for the snacks." And so he walks out the door. And I just look at him, I go like, he's a musician. They're like, oh. it's like one of my favorite stories to tell, because, you know, he tells that, and then he tells them it's like the Cheers bar too. Like, everybody here knows who you are. See this snack? Like, they know this is my favorite snack. You know, it's that kind of relationship that we have with our patients. Now, that particular couple did not choose us, and that's okay. You know, that's okay. I don't know if they were even serious contenders. I don't know if they were searching out, or maybe he was a doctor thinking of opening a similar clinic. I'm not sure. But it was just my favorite patient story, because I loved that he felt like he could come in and he could go into our lounge. He felt like he could have a conversation with me. He felt like he was just part of the family. And that's,
Still setting.
yeah, I love it. I love it.
Well, actually, again, talking about you being the leader and interacting with patients. I mean, you don't see that often sometimes in a lot of the healthcare settings, and it's a very unique position to be in. I mean, I guess those folks, they just didn't have the what kind of the patience to figure out what's going on there, and they judged. But again, to each like their loss, I would say.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's okay. It's all
it
right.
is what it is, right? You don't get them all, and but the idea is the amount of folks that you've assisted, the amount of folks that and the environment that you've created is it speaks for itself. It is open. It sounds like it's almost like a VIP lounge, and people can come
Oh
in,
yeah.
and the patients are really, it's a wellness place. You come in,
Yeah.
you're gonna get healthy, and you feel good about it, and you feel comfortable, you feel like home. And yes, it's kind of private because it's not insurance based. But talking about that part, um, I cruise a lot, so I see people actually spending thousands of dollars on the alcohol, beverage
Right.
package, right? I mean, you can spend that same amount of money and do something for your health, right? I'm
That's
not even
right.
gonna, add up the numbers, the dollars here. And that goes for everything. I mean, we hear this all the time, even in the fitness world, right? Oh, it's too expensive a membership. I mean, if you spend $8 on Starbucks, every day, you're actually like,
There's your gym membership.
exceeding, yeah, gym membership and beyond. I mean, like that's a gym, the gear, the whole nine. I mean,
Yeah.
with all your beverages at the gym. So it's a different thing, right? It's just a mindset, how you look at things. What is what is your, you want to be healthy now and
Right.
later, you got to invest in it. Again, you said it's an investment, like everything else. You don't. I mean, your time is valuable. Yes. Well, you invest in your health or something else. Like I told you, like the story about the gentleman that I worked with, whose father passed on after literally the next day of retirement. It should be on everybody's mind. like I need to live as vital, as happy, as energetic, as you know, everything. I have to be like 100% optimized at all times to live, because every day pain is, everybody has experienced pain in their life at a point or another, right? You get a headache, it's painful, right? You get a
Mhm.
little, pain somewhere, and as you age, that's actually gonna, inflammation happens, a lot of stuff happens. We talked about multiple things. Judy covered quite a bit of elements that make us, ill and sick and so on and so forth. And so if you're not taking care of yourself and investing in those things, that's a problem. So again, my take is very simple, folks. Sometimes, these things are unique. People, listen, we hear about exclusive people going to exclusive hotels, exclusive places. I think we should start like thinking about exclusive healthcare settings where you can get
Right.
stuff. And we do have that. Concierge medicine is a new thing now. I mean, we have that. But that's more generic stuff. But in what you have is really, it's by the way, this is the new trend. I think in the UAE, they're opening up actually wellness hotels where actually they have all these stuff. Yeah, in Turkey they have them. In Korea they have them. It is becoming worldwide, concepts where you come in and get all your tests and all the stuff, get, infused, get all the energy, the
Yep.
vitamins, get your own tailored, customized version of your supplements and the whole nine. And
Yep.
people are optimizing. Obviously, it costs money, but certainly it is something that is available. And I'm pretty sure, that if people add the numbers together, they can do it. People, there's a will, there's a way. We see people actually get loans to do things that are like completely off. That's not going to benefit them in anything, and so on and
Yeah.
so forth. But
People who say, an executive physical is expensive, I say it is nowhere near as expensive as a heart attack. Or
hospital
go
stay.
try going through chemo and radiation. That'll break you. Where our goal is to keep you from being in those hospital settings, to keep you from having these traumatic um, reactions to a diagnosis where it's depleting your bank account, but it also is depleting your health. And people on the other side of chemo and radiation, will all tell you that their body is completely different. They getting yourself back to that peak performance after something like that is, you're never going to be exactly where you were. But boy, when we find things early and we get them out and you never had to go down that road, that's the best money you can spend, for sure. For sure.
Oh,
And
listen,
sometimes
I
it's
mean,
just the peace of mind. We have a test called the Gallery test, and so we can actually test for a whole slew of cancers. And we have found, this was a recent case. We have several cases, but a recent case, we had one that came back, which was a head or neck cancer. And this particular cancer, we couldn't identify it exactly where it was. So, we did MRIs and CTs trying to find it, sent to ENT. Turned out that in one of his sinuses, the ENT got up there and said, well, there was something a little funny. I went ahead and biopsied it. It was cancer. And it was a cancer that would have grown very fast. So the fact that we were able to detect that off of this blood test and then go and find it and get it out of there, that's a game changer. I mean, game changer for this patient. Imagine that if it waited until he actually had a symptom. That's that when
right.
you have symptoms that tell you have cancer, that's when it's a real problem.
Well, preventative, right?
Yeah.
Medicine is something that I think we've kind of lost, and really this is it. Like, you have to preemptively check and make sure that things are happening, and every decade. I mean, some of these tests. I mean, I've done some of the advanced tests myself. I mean, they can map out literally like what are your risk at
Yeah.
and how long the risk can be. I mean, you can be clear. The next 10 years, you're good. Nothing's going to happen, and so on and so forth. So you can find more of this stuff that you can. So it gives you a peace of mind. To your point, I mean, it's just something else. I mean, think about it. If you have this cloud over your head that something's wrong, right? That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Your mood is down, your mental state is over and stuff. But on the contrary, if you hear, and by the way, even if you found something and you know that you can do something about it, you still, okay,
Right.
there is hope. I can
There's
make things
hope.
happen. But if there
Yep.
is no hope, it's over. I mean, your mental state goes down and everything else crashes. And that's when people lose the will to live and
That's
it's
right.
over. It is amazing. And listen, I mean, it is. unfortunate. I mean, there's a cost to everything, and we have to take it. By the way, you're right. Insurance is codes driven, and authorization is a mandatory thing, and that's how they get paid. And so, yeah, if you cannot, and there's always a demand, like, what is this for? Why didn't you try this one? There's MTAs. There's all kind of stuff that goes on in the back end before you can get an approval,
which are
and
all based on costs. It's
it's
all
all cost. Yes,
the
correct.
acceptable death rate. There's an acceptable death rate, and okay, well then I guess we'll cover this. Or well, the chance of them dying is, it's not too high. There's still a chance, but it's not too high, so we're not going to cover it. I mean, it's absolutely a bit of a racket, and socialized medicine is no better. One of our founders, he actually was the head of family medicine in Manitoba, and was in Canada for years and years. And he just said everything was based on the acceptable death rate. We've had Canadian physicians, when we first put in the CT scanner, we were doing virtual colonographies and we were doing them in the office. They were thinking of getting the first one of these in Canada. And we were doing it in our office. And so several Canadian physicians flew down to kind of learn it, and what is it, how do we do it, how do we interpret it. There's a lot of software that goes to it. You can fly through the colon like a video game. But it's just a reminder that even though healthcare in the United States, someone will say, oh, it's so expensive or it's broken or whatever, it still exists. There are some places where, especially where there's socialized medicine, that they don't have a lot of these things, or if they do, there's scarcity to it. How many MRIs are in a particular province? Well, then you have to wait 6 months to get an MRI. Well, it could be something serious. We had a niece that lived in Canada, and she had an X-ray and showed a growth in her ankle. And they said, well, it'll be 8 months and you can get an MRI, but we only have two machines within 300 miles. And, but it's 8 months. Well, of course, my husband went up and jumped up and down. This is crazy. She's a child. So we brought her here, put her on her own machine, and got a CT. And then we're like, oh, okay, this is serious. It's in the growth plate. It's serious. Um, Ended up getting, able to get surgery and get it taken out. But 8 months on a child with a growth in the growth plate that was very suspicious of cancer. Praise God, it wasn't, but very suspicious of cancer. And even to this day, just the toll that took having that giant growth in that growth plate on one side. I mean, those are lifelong things. You end up with leg length discrepancy, you have hip pain. I mean, you can't wait on these things. It's something that we take for granted in the United States. And just that if there was a test you needed, there's actually a way to get it. It's different when, oh yeah, you can afford it, but there's no access. There's no way to get the test. Or the gallbladder surgeries that are 18 months out. Well, if you've ever had gallbladder disease, do you really want to wait 18 months to have gallbladder surgery? I mean, this is nuts. But this is just the reality of two systems. So I think there's a give and a take. I think there's a lot of ways that the United States healthcare system fails, and there's a lot of things that we could do better. When you have the time and the resources and things like we do, it's the best of the best as far as availability and access. But we also know that that's not sustainable for everybody. So there's there's a give and a take to everything that we do. But I will say, because I'm very cognizant that, and our founders are very cognizant that we may not be for everybody because that access just isn't there financially. This is why we do podcasts, why we write books, why we try to give as much empowerment to individuals as we can. That is us just giving back, saying, we will give you as much free information as we can about health and wellness, and give you the opportunity to start becoming the boss of your own health, because that we really truly believe and we're passionate about what we do. Follow the passion, and the financials will work out. But we're so passionate that you don't have to get paid for everything you do. This is why we're happy to share information. We've got a new book coming out, Be the Boss of Your Health, comes out this fall, and features the boss method. Great information that goes even further beyond what we talked about. Maybe we'll come back on in the fall and we can talk about the
Oh
book.
yes.
I'm just excited about what we do, and I'm thrilled to be able to come on with you today, Hurricane.
Well, no, no, listen, it's an honor, and I enjoy these conversations. And yeah, yes, you're right. I mean, well, by the way, I want to just add one thing quickly. You know, people are willing to pay when it comes to health, and people are willing to sacrifice a lot of things, if they can save a life of a loved one. And we see this all over the place. You're right. I mean, the access is available. That's, in other places, some of these procedures, some of these things are not even there. You can't even get
Right.
them, even if you wanted to, even if you had the money.
Even
So
if
it
you had
becomes
money, you
very,
couldn't buy it. Right.
yeah, I mean, parts of the world. I mean, you can be a millionaire, but you have no access to these things, and you can't even. So at least you have them, so someone can literally access your services if they can afford them. But certainly, people can make a choice. What do I want, this or that? And if it saves a life, and it's going to change the whole concept of somebody's loved one, and see them with you, to your point, prevent something that is going to be detrimental to their health eventually. It's, and yes, you're right. Waiting 18 months for anything that is painful is just that's bad, and it can get worse, and then there may be irreversible at that point. And that's another topic of discussion, because then that's too late, and people would actually lose their cool. And we've heard stories. I mean, there's horror stories. And it's funny you said something quickly about the insurance. Is that yes, insurance is actuaries, and it's actually assumptions based in. So yes, debt ratios and all these things and the risk factors are all part of the calculations of what benefits, how it goes, and what's covered. It's complex, and yeah, it's sad as it sounds, but that's just how it is. I mean,
That's how
everything
it is.
costs money, but reality is reality. And yeah, well, listen, Judy, it was an honor, a pleasure. I had so much fun. I know, and thank you for exceeding the time, and allowing a little bit more here flexibility. This is powerful, and thank you for coming on and sharing. To your point, the availability, and then the information. Information is free, right? That's a good point. It's very easy, and people can actually take it to the bank and learn, and maybe find ways. And by the way, if they apply some of the stuff that you shared today, I think there's a lot of us that can be ahead of the game, maybe not even need, to get into a status where we need major invention intervention, I would say. So that's what it is, folks. So we can do a good job, by just doing the basics and staying away from the wrong stuff. Not very difficult to do. So Judy, thank you so much for being with us on this show today.
That's been
Appreciate
my
you.
pleasure. Thank you, Hurricane.
Most welcome. And that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed our discussion today. Great, exchange, a lot of information. And yes, for those of people that want to be and are interested and to check out the clinic and some of the services, we will have the link of their website on the description of the show, so you can connect with them and you can take it from there. And certainly, if you need the help, or you know someone who needs it, that's something that we have. At least now you have the resource and the access. That being said, American H. We'll be talking soon. New day, new show, new topic. Bye for now.